welcome to Today in Woburn. I'm your host, Samantha Stone, and we're going to catch up with another candidate for school committee. Really thrilled that Andrew Lipsett is with us. But before we do that, we have got lots of things happening in the city and wanted to catch up with Mayor Scott Galvin as always. Welcome, Scott.
Great to be here. Thanks, Samantha.
Yeah, this was a busy weekend. I know that there was a trivia, there was the hospice walks. I didn't get to go see it, but I heard all the fireworks. I live close enough to kind of look out my office window. And if I tilted my head in just the right way, I could get a little bit of a shot of everything. It sounded great.
Yeah, it was really, it was a good weekend, a busy weekend. Started off, on Saturday, like you said, they had the Kiwanis did a great job with their festival. This will be, this is the last year they're going to be doing it in the fall, that they're switching back to traditional Flag Day, which I think a lot of people are ready for, and the past 3 years have been a great substitute, but people are really itching to get back to the full Flag Day in June. So it was a great finale for them, and fireworks. Like you said, you could hear them from your house, and they were loud, but it was a nice day. Very good.
Yeah,
it was. And the Tana Tatas were out. We kicked off breast cancer awareness month, and they were out in full force. They had a great first week. I think they raised close to $5,000 with their boot drive, which was great. They were all over the city, so very, very good for them. And then hospice, which is another excellent organization, and they've been doing their stuff for a long time. Had a nice turnout over at the IA, and my family was able to participate like we have. I've been doing that ever since I was in my late 20s, when it was just the Irish American Club. And
is it easier or harder now, these years later, Scott? I don't want to say or anything, but
I'd say it's harder, but I enjoy the end. I enjoy the after festivities probably just as much now as I did then. So that's a good thing.
That's great. I love it. That's awesome. So there's a lot going on this coming weekend as well. We've got Porch Fest coming up on Saturday. Let's keep our fingers crossed that the weather holds out, but even if it isn't, hey, bring an umbrella, wear a rain jacket, right. Go out there and hear some live music, and people can go to the website to get all the details there. I know there's also, I think, a lantern walk that's happening in the evening of, I think, Sunday the 8th. I might have the date wrong, so people should confirm that, but I think that's correct. So
it's Columbus Day weekend next weekend. I'm trying, getting too far, right? Columbus Day, right?
Yeah, you're right. No. It's I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm going to completely blame it on chemo brain, but the truth is I just don't know.
I think maybe it might be it's the following week. Yeah, it's the following, not this weekend. But that's good. This is I know you had the brains behind the Porch Fest on last week, and they were really excited. And I think this is going to be one of those events that grows with the years, and we're excited about it. We've got a band down at the new Pocket Park, which will be nice, and they'll be doing that up too. So it'll be a nice weekend. And I don't know if we're missing anything else, but that's definitely one of the events. And as usual, it's going to rain, so we'll keep the umbrellas out and enjoy the weekend.
It won't hurt us from having fun, right? It's still warm enough to be out in the little drizzles if we need to, and I'm sure it'll be pockets of it. And I know that was supported in part by some grant money from the Cultural Council, which is a great resource here that I think which we've chatted about when they came on. So, and I know that there are flu clinics coming up. I wanted to mention that there's a couple of them coming up later this month.
There's a flu clinic this week, and there'll be multiples, but it's a good start. COVID's starting to poke back a little bit, so there have been requests to do COVID clinics. Right now we're looking into that, and I think as we all know, the local drugstores have really stepped up. It's very convenient, whether it's CVS, Walmart, but we are looking into that as well. And we're watching to see how the occurrences go, and Andrew might be able to talk a little bit more about that. I don't think we've seen much in the schools, knock on wood, but we are watching it.
Excellent. Somebody asked this question, sent me a little note, so I'm going to talk about it. It feels very early to talk about winter parking bans, but I guess it's not that far away. So I thought I would just do a quick reminder. I just want to look at my notes here. It's you can't park on even numbers of the streets from, like, it's usually November 15th through the end of March. Is that correct?
That's right. Yep. Correct.
Great. Yeah. So it's, people have a few weeks before we get to that.
They do. We'll make sure we get the notice out, and the police have they're very lenient on that until it really gets going. So it's not, it's something to be concerned about, and they'll be noticed out on the website. And again, like the police aren't super vigilant, but they do, as time goes by, they start to watch it.
Just as a reminder for people, the reason we do this is purely to keep the streets clean for plowing.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, if there's no snow, we're not out ticketing people to ticket people,
No.
but the goal is to make sure that we have safe roads. And
yeah, it's being proactive. And as you know, most the threshold now for calling a snow emergency has decreased significantly, not only in Woburn, but everywhere, for good reason. It does help the DPW and the contractors plow the roads out. So we generally, when we get a much lower accumulation than in past years, we're doing a snow emergency, for a period of time to help get the snow off the road.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Anything else that you want to cover before I bring Andrew into the conversation?
No, I think, I appreciate the time, and I know it's, I particularly your time now as we're moving forward. I appreciate what you're doing and the stamina that you bring to the table to do this. So thanks for what you're doing, and we'll catch you next week.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And I should just let folks know, I also reached out to Representative Haggerty. We'll have him on probably early November, talk a little bit about some of the state laws around refugee support and some of the things that are happening at the State House catch up. It's election season locally right now. So the next few weeks are really dedicated. We want to make sure that every candidate who wants to come on and be interviewed has an opportunity to do that. And it's my pleasure to be able to do that. But I want folks to know that he's agreed to join us as well. So we'll circle back around to some of those more state level topics in a few weeks.
Thank you. See you next week. Excellent.
Thanks, Scott.
Bye.
Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm always excited to chat with you and really appreciate the time. This is a super busy time of year. All the, families are back in school and schools open again, and you're working and teaching and all of that. So I appreciate the time greatly.
Thank you so much for doing it.
I thought we could start our conversation today. I want to talk a little bit about you. Recently, the Woburn Teachers Association gave a very nice endorsement for your candidacy, and want to talk a little bit about that and kind of get your thoughts. I think we're the only incumbent, unless my brain is not working right now, that has received that endorsement. And I want to talk a little bit about your perspective and what that means to you and why you felt that they did that.
Sure. I mean, it's obviously a tremendous honor. As an educator myself, it's meaningful to have my work on the school committee recognized by my fellow educators, by the members of the WTA, and I couldn't be happier to be endorsed alongside Jesse Wetzel and James Austin, who are two fantastic candidates. You're right. I was the only incumbent endorsed, and I think this was obviously a very trying year, and for incumbents in particular, I think. I think both of my fellow incumbents who are running for re-election are very, very worthy candidates. I've learned a ton from Patricia Chisholm about the way that school committee works, about the finances, about the day-to-day operations. Her institutional memory and knowledge is really impressive. Ellen Crowley has a long history of supporting vulnerable students and has done just really tremendous work in sort of building up the Woburn Public Schools. So, I think they were both very, very worthy candidates as well. I think, I think you have to let the teachers sort of speak for themselves in terms of why I received an endorsement here. I would, if I were to wager a guess, I would hope that it has to do with the fact that, I'm a teacher. I know what the day-to-day is like. I speak the language. I hope also that both over the course of my 4 years on the committee, but especially over the last year, that my efforts to sort of improve our communication, speak up for our long-term needs in the district, fight for some of the funding that our students need. I hope that was sort of at the heart of it as well.
Let's talk a little bit about looking back. So you've been two terms now, if my math is correct. And there's been a million things that have happened in those 2 terms. It's been a really It's not been a boring, let's just put it that way. So as you look back and you think about, obviously, when you did this, you were very thoughtful about running for school committee the first time. You didn't just decide one day, I'm going to wake up on a whim and do this. But, there's a lot of things that have happened over the last few years, good things and bad things and in between things. What have you learned along the way?
We don't have enough time in the interview for what I've learned along the way. I mean, first and foremost, if you're going to run for school committee, try not to do it immediately before a global pandemic would come to mind. But in the absence of being able to control that, I think, I came in to this position with an understanding of education. I've worked in education all of my adult life in various capacities, including as a classroom teacher for now 15 years. And so I understood what education looked like from that perspective. I understood what it was like to work in a school. I understood what it was like to work with kids. I understood the pressures of that. I understood the needs, especially of our most vulnerable students, right? What I think I've learned the most is what it takes to run a district from the administration side. I think I've gained that understanding, the needs, the perspective of administration. I've also, since I've been on the committee, my son, when I joined the committee, he was in kindergarten. So I've sort of experienced all of elementary school through his eyes. So I've seen this through a parent's perspective as well. And I think I've come to better understand the needs of families, the needs of, families of students who are struggling in the day-to-day, who may have a learning disability or may have trouble accessing curriculum in a variety of ways. I've been able to attend CPAC meetings and meetings of our English Language Parent Advisory Council, our LPAC, meeting with parents, meeting with families, and sort of understanding the pressures that are on them. I think I understand better now than I did when I began some of the ways in which school funding works. It's obviously a deeply complex subject. I still have a lot to learn there, but I think I have a better understanding now of some of the structural barriers that exist, some of the funding sources and how we can sort of work on those. And then, just sort of generally, I would say, understanding how the committee itself works, right? What our role is, how we can approach problems, how we can help to solve problems. I've been sort of pushing and leading the way on sort of revising school committee protocols. I took the lead in writing a document that sort of laid out our interaction with the public, our interaction with each other, communication, all of this is things that I've sort of picked up along the way. And I know that I have a lot more to learn, and I'm hoping that voters give me a chance to learn it.
I want to talk specifically about funding. I know it was only one of the many things that you talked about, but it is something that has been, at the heart of a lot of people's concerns, and at all perspectives, right? Are we funding it enough? Are we funding it too little? When you look at communities like us, right? We're not going to compare ourselves to, Boulder, Colorado necessarily. So, but when we look at communities like ours, are we appropriately funded? And if we're not, where do we hope to be as we move forward?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, one of the interesting things about school finance is that this is always a much more complex question than it appears on the surface, right? There are measures out there that allow us to try to do those comparisons, things like net school spending and the amount above what's called the foundation budget, which is basically the bare minimum that a district needs by state law to operate its schools, given its population, given its student needs, right? But there's a specific number that districts can't go below. That's also the number that the state provides oftentimes in state funding. But districts often go beyond that. And Woburn has generally done fairly well in terms of our baseline number, our percentage above net school spending. We're somewhere in the vicinity of 140% of net school spending. And that's actually climbed a little bit in the most recent budget. What's important to understand is, when we look at this from a per student perspective, it's really a very imperfect way to look at this, because a district's needs, if a student leaves the district, our costs don't go down by that per pupil amount. Similarly, when a student moves in, our income, our revenue doesn't immediately jump that much. So what we need to do is really think about, are we meeting the needs of the students we have, right? Woburn has a lot of different pressures on it right now. It's, you know, I know you've heard a lot of people say this, and I can confirm, you know, we are a changing community now. This is something that I embrace. It's something that I think is going to give us a lot. But it's also something that we need to think about how we fund. We know that students, for example, from low-income backgrounds, need a lot more in the way of in-school support. You know, I'm really gratified that the legislature and the governor saw fit to extend in perpetuity the free breakfast and lunch programs that we had established during COVID. This is something that's incredibly important to support schools in supporting our low-income families. But there's a lot more that kids need, and so those are additional costs. You know, costs in terms of social workers, costs in terms of wraparound services, costs in terms of family and community engagement. Our growing multilingual population. This is a population where we know from both statewide and district statistics need additional support, both in terms of graduation rates and test scores and all these things, but also in terms of feeling part of the community, being able to sort of access curriculum and access class the same way as their peers. These are things that we need to invest in. And you know, Woburn has done that, and we've seen that investment over the years, but our population is growing very quickly, and we are finding ourselves in need of more support. Certainly our special education, our students with disabilities, need a lot of support, and you know, different supports depending on the student, depending on the school, depending on the family. That includes our rising out of district costs, and that's something that has taken a big jump over the past calendar year. So as we transition more towards an urban school district, as we have needs that are beyond simply like the really bare minimum of what happens in the classroom. Sometimes the numbers in terms of school funding don't always match what we think they do, right? So we have to really look at a more granular level in terms of what our students need. I think we've done a lot of work. I know administration carefully budgets, and we look for the best way to spend our appropriation. I will say that I appreciate the pressures on the city side. I do think that we need to take a hard look at our revenue. I think this is something that Woburn has always prided itself on being a community that has a low tax burden. You'll find that on a lot of candidates for mayor and for city hall's listings. We need to think about the other side of that coin. Taxes can be seen as a burden. They can also be seen as how we fund the things that our community needs. And I think we should take a close look at how we collect revenue and what we do with that revenue, and whether it can be better served supporting some of our kids that are the most vulnerable right now.
One of the other things I wanted to talk with you about and get your perspective on is also, you called out some special communities of people who do need who needs services and programs and all those things. And those are very real. But in general, I think there's also a change in the skill set that students need to be successful in their life, whether they're going to go out and get a job right away, whether they're going to go to college, whether they're going to the military, right? There's just a lot changed in our world and what we need to be able to do. And I know, and so I'm curious your perspective on, how we think about making sure that we're staying on top of those new skills, approaches, and ways of learning. I know there was a strategic conversation specifically about literacy. I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts about where these things are headed and how we as a schools committee should be thinking about addressing our future and where it goes.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously our economy is changing very rapidly. The jobs of tomorrow are not the jobs of today. And I'm sort of two minds on that, right? I mean, I'm a history teacher, so that's my perspective. I come from a humanities perspective. I tend to take a very, very long look at social changes. We do need to prepare our students for the jobs of tomorrow and for the kinds of work that we don't even know what it's going to be. We've seen the way that our society approaches work changed pretty dramatically in the last 10, 15 years. We talk about the gig economy, and our students can expect in many cases to be jumping from job to job quite a bit more than even people of my generation, right? And certainly more than those of my parents' generation. And so, being able to build in for our students that flexibility, that ability to operate independently, to really seize opportunities when they come. I think that's a really, really important thing. To that extent, I mean, I think we've done a really, really admirable job with that. I know, the Innovation Pathways program that we've built through our engineering programs at the high school, and beyond engineering, our STEM programs at the high school is one of the most exciting things we have going in the district right now. It's giving students the chance to work with some really high level professional staff and in some areas, like, again, I'm a history teacher. I don't understand half this stuff, but I know that, what we're seeing is that our students are now able to go and get opportunities in corporations, in research facilities that are so far beyond anything that any public school district can provide their kids right now. So they're getting that opportunity, which is fantastic. On the other hand, I'm cognizant of the fact that I think our skill sets are our skill sets, right? And you mentioned literacy. Literacy is something that you're going to need no matter your position, right? It's going to be something that you're going to need for communication. It's going to be something that you're going to need to read and understand a training manual. It's going to be something that you're going to need to write a dissertation, right? I mean, there's a billion different reasons why literacy is one of the most, if not the most fundamental thing we can have our students leave us understanding and being able to do. You mentioned our new comprehensive literacy plan. That's going to be rolled out over the next few weeks as we sort of, right now what we have is focused at the elementary level. We're working with DESE to sort of develop some programs for middle schools. But this is a really exciting program. It's very much drawing on what's called the science of reading, really cutting edge understandings of how our kids learn to read, phonemic awareness, and sort of working with with sounds directly, with vocabulary directly. We're taking a really thoughtful, I think, long-term approach. We're drawing on a lot of different resources, a lot of different curricula. We're not just sort of tying ourselves to one thing. We're hoping to see some pretty significant gains in our literacy at the elementary level, and then roll it out as we go to our middle school and high school levels. So I think literacy is really critical here. I think critical thinking, our ability to have students understand not just what's in the textbook, but how it applies to every situation, right? What we call authentic assessment in the schools. These are things that we've started to work on project-based learning at a lot of different levels. I think those are really good transitions to be making. So I'm really excited about the ways in which we're really trying to service our students' needs and their future needs.
I love it. Well, I really appreciate you taking some time to chat with me and catch up on some of the things that have been happening and where we want to go. Anything else about your campaign or anything that you want voters to know before I let you wrap up today?
My sense is probably that the voters know everything they're going to know about me at this point. But certainly if anyone's interested in learning more, my email is always open. You can contact me at lipsettschoolcommittee@gmail.com. Or my website, I actually needs potentially a little updating, but lipsettschoolcommittee.com. And I'm happy to answer any questions that people might have.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
I really appreciate everyone. As I say to all the candidates, it's a lot of work to dedicate to our city and our community, serving and running for these positions. I'm so grateful we have talented folks like yourself who are willing to do that. Woburn, please, as always, continue to take good care of each other and make sure you have a plan to vote.